What's the good word, Josh? Your boy DKB here. Welcome to New York Jets Syndicate channel. Football is back officially today. Preseason kicks off. New York Jets versus Cleveland Browns. It'll be on 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I'm so excited just to see bodies hitting bodies again. Football's being tossed around. Hopefully, plenty of touchdowns, a dominant performance by the team. This is really the beginning stage of seeing what this roster could really be. I know from the New York Jets side of things, we're not expected to play any starters, right? I think the closest thing to a potential starter that we may have will be on the offensive line, defensive line, and then potentially in the safety room. Just because there's, it's not a billion and one bodies there necessarily. But plenty of storylines to pay attention to. So, Zach Wilson, we have him starting off the game. We'll see how far they go into it, right? Obviously, you still have Tim Boyle, you have Chris Streveler behind him. So maybe you give Zach Wilson the first half, you give Tim Boyle and Streveler the third and fourth quarter. But this is Zach Wilson's first chance to really identify to this team how his rehabilitation has gone, right? A lot of people are considering this his resetting stage, and we've heard a lot of this actually, where Aaron Rodgers and Nathaniel Hackett, they essentially have PhDs in football, right? With the amount of knowledge, how long they've been around football, the levels to which they've done things in their respective roles. And so if anybody was going to take Zach Wilson back from block zero and try to get him fully around the board, it would be these two guys. The veteran he should have always had in front of him, and he really couldn't have picked a better one than Aaron Rodgers per se, and then a strong offensive acumen that Nathaniel Hackett's going to provide. So very, very excited to hear, to see what he does out there on the field. Aaron Rodgers has spoken highly about Zach Wilson's I don't want to say production, but the steps that he's taking towards being able to eventually become a starter in the league again. So, let's see, if there's a stark, difference in what we've seen. And to be honest, and to be fair, you could take a look at preseason tape from last year to whatever we see this year, right? That'll be one of the closest indicators. Vanilla defenses, what does it look like, right? Because even last season, a lot of us saw what he went out there and did during the preseason prior to injuring his leg, and we instantly started fearing what our record for the season was going to look like. He looked timid, he looked afraid, he looked unsure of what was happening. He was scrambling in situations where he didn't need to scramble and should have stood tall in the pocket. So we'll see what this new confidence, what being around this new coaching staff has done. It's early, but there should be some tangible improvements here. We'll get to see who separates in the running back room. I would expect, since Bam Knight has had the hot hand recently, I expect he'll be out there with our starting unit so far, and we'll see if he can make some big plays happen. Right, he's underrated from a speed aspect. He's been able to rip off some chunk plays. So for an offense that's built around having a strong running game, especially with Nathaniel Hackett and Keith Carter's influence, I expect he should be able to capitalize here, even behind this offensive line. The wide receiver room, it'll be interesting. So no Garrett, no Corey, no Alan Lazard, right? Which means we're going to get deep into our undrafted free agent bag with all the wide receivers we picked up. And Jason Brownlee is going to be at the forefront of my mind. I'm curious if we play Randall Cobb, Mecole Hardman. I'm sure they'll get a little bit of run. But I'm looking specifically at Jason Brownlee, who's been absolutely tearing up training camp. And I'm looking at Xavier Gibson. He's a guy that I originally thought had the best chance to make the roster as a he'll probably be considered a pure slot receiver, but I thought he added the most overall contributions to this roster. A strong punt returner, could be a kick returner, and then of course what he can do in the slot, potentially winning on the boundary as well, in kind of like an Elijah Moore type role. But he's been able to contribute a little bit more so in the last few days with hauling in some long touchdowns, catch and run. So I want to see how that translates during preseason. In the tight end room, this is Jeremy Rucker's time to take his stake that he's ready to be an active, have an active role this season. That should happen anyways with us running more two tight end sets. But I've been a proponent of this for a while. I really do think he can take over as a tight end 2 before the season's over, ahead of a guy like CJ Uzama. So we'll see what happens with him. Offensive line is probably going to be where, one of the next biggest storylines are. We're going to see Mekhi Becton about 20 to 25 snaps. This will be his first chance to prove he's not playing a full game, but that he can get through a decent amount of series. Before, which that should give him, let's say average series is 8 to 9 plays. We should see him for 2 to 4 series, somewhere in that range. This will be our first chance to see, can he make it through? Can his body actually hold up? If he's going to break this injury-prone glasshouse label, this is really going to be where he's going to need to get it done. We're going to see Joe Tittman. Maybe he can make up some ground in this center competition and at least bump up the second string ahead of a guy like Wes Schweitzer. I don't think Max Mitchell was playing from what I saw. There's not too many other names, matter of fact, in the offensive line depth department that I can rip off the top of my head. But I am excited to also see Tristan Colon. So we'll kind of see how those particular guys are able to go out there and play some things out. Defensive line-wise, we know our bag is deep. Really wish we had Jonathan Marshall for a time like this still, but we should see our rookie, Will McDonald, roll out there. Interesting to see if we roll out Jermaine Johnson or Carl Lawson, since JJ's been taking most of the first team snaps lately. But Michael Clemens rolling out there. I want to see what it looks like with Quentin Jefferson being able to stroll out. Not necessarily excited to see Solomon Thomas, but can Tanzel Smart be another preseason warrior for us this season? Maybe he can find his way onto the roster. So definitely some names to be concerned with there. Linebacker unit, obviously, Jamie Sherwood is the go-to name, but my personal favorite and who I want to see ball out is Chaz Surratt. I want to see if he can earn himself that fifth linebacker role if we want to carry 5. And I really do think that he could still be a pretty big player in this linebacker core if he can actually piece some things together, and he's on the perfect defense to do it. And then seeing if maybe you can get a bounce back from a guy like Bryce Hall, who I think more so from a confidence perspective than anything has been beaten up. We've seen Jimmy Moreland make quite a few plays, return touchdowns. Maybe he can keep up the takeaways. Javelin Guidry as our main slot cornerback. Definitely some names to be interested there. And then in the safety room, we essentially have 3 positions locked down. Adrian Amos is, our Chuck Clark free agent replacement. Tony Adams, who's the current starter. And then you have Jordan Whitehead, also a current starter. So this will be the chance for anybody else to separate. Ashton Davis versus Trey Dean versus Marquise Waters. I feel like there's another name out there that I'm forgetting. We don't have Will Parks anymore. But nonetheless, can somebody out there separate and prove that they can find a way onto this roster? We might not even be able to carry 4. So we're going to need to see a pretty strong game from somebody. But again, I'm super hyped. Storylines aside, it's just going to be good to see the green and white roll out there again. And I expect we'll come out from this game with a W. I will be interested to see what the Cleveland Browns' Jim Schwartz defense looks like. They've been pretty solid from an offensive perspective, especially under Jacoby Brissett. They don't have that anymore. But if they can match their defense and even make them look average or at least slightly above average, they should be set. You expect the top offense with Deshaun. They've been a lower tier defense for a while. I think they've ranked 20th or lower in like the last handful of seasons. So if they can turn that around, and you don't really expect much from the defenses per se during preseason because everything's so vanilla. It's really just athletes versus athletes. But if you can get excited about whatever they can show today, I'm all for it. So let me know what your guys' thoughts are. Cleveland Browns versus Jets. Who's your favorite players you're keeping an eye on? What do you expect the outcome of the game to look like? And I'll catch you guys again. Peace.